You're listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast, and I'm your host, Abuja based photographer Tavishima George Ayede. A few days ago, I was listening to another podcast. It's called the Sales Culture Exchange, I think, and it's hosted by Joe Lemon. And he was talking about the transparency economy. Now, in his own opinion, or the way he took the narrative, was you can look at the transparency economy from the angle of either faking it till you make it or keeping it real. So that was the angle that he came at it from. What's the definition of the transparency economy? If you go online, you find different kinds of definitions. That's apart from Mr. Lemon's perspective of looking at it, which is whether you fake it till you make it or you keep it real. But in my own opinion, I would say the bottom line, the transparency economy is concerned with how authentic you are in the business process, or as it relates to what we're talking about here, in the sales process. So, in the wedding industry, as a photographer or as a wedding planner, are you going to fake it till you make it, or are you going to keep it real and come across as authentic to the people the brides and grooms who are trying to book our services? Now, on the fake it till you make it angle, the whole point behind it is to appear exclusive and to appear high end. Now, these are not ideas that Mr. Lemon was expressing himself personally, but I just figured, as he was riffing on the subject, that it also has applications to those of us in the wedding industry. So, fake it till you make it, appear exclusive and high end. So, how does that relate to weddings? The obvious way, of course, would be to really floss out with pictures on Instagram and just floss out generally and show that sweet life, that high life, and so you can appeal to the cream of the crop. So that's the whole idea. While on the keeping it real aspect, perspective of the discussion, Mr. Lemon was of the opinion that it could be a competitive advantage, although I didn't get a sense of how that can be from the discussion that he had on the podcast. But he says that keeping it real is a good thing to do because it will help you to engender trust. And how does that relate to weddings? That would be those people, and I must confess, I lean closer to this school, who try to be more approachable and more accessible. So I guess the bottom line would be people like that would be more believable in the sales process. I mean, as we try to attract brides and grooms, and as we keep on talking to them, so those would be the two perspectives. Floss out on Instagram, appeal to the cream of the crop, or in all your promotions and marketing, be more approachable and accessible, and because of that, you're going to be more believable. Now, which way is right? That depends. I would say in this case, there's no right or wrong if you ignore the ethical issues that come up if you are faking it to the extreme. But let's just ignore the extreme scenarios here. So, whether you fake it till you make it or you keep it real, there's no right or wrong here. It just depends on larger questions of brand positioning. The idea behind brand positioning basically is who do you want? I mean, how do you want your customers to see you? And the related angle of that is that it would also determine who it is that is going to buy you. So those are some of the key considerations. The first one, larger questions of brand positioning. How do you want people to see you? Who is it that you want to buy you? What kind of brides? How do you want brides to see you? And which kind of brides do you want to buy you? The cream of the crop or the salt of the earth? And then the second question would be, let's say the question of value proposition. Now, the idea behind value proposition is, what are you selling? Now, are you selling pomp and aspirations, or are you being very practical in carrying out your services to the bride and and to the groom. Now, these questions are not as theoretical as they sound. Brand positioning and your value proposition. Because if you look at the Abuja scene, I'm not going to call any names. There are two wedding planners that I know and I've worked with before, good friends of mine. One of them, on one hand, is really good at promoting and selling out this flossed out, really camp, posh weddings. And so, if you want to trend, if you want your wedding to be a hit, if you want your wedding to portray that, the good life, the cream life, or whatever it is that we're going to call it, then you reach out to her. But then on the other hand, there's another guy, a friend of mine, real cool dude, but he has a project management background. So even though he is also a very popular wedding planner in Abuja, the way that he runs his business is really practical and down to earth. He's like I said, he has a project management background. So, everything runs on time, everything has to be put together and run real smooth. And that's his own approach. Oh, he also is interested in theater, so they try to throw in a mix of theater into the wedding planning, maybe like innovative ways for how the bride and groom can dance into the hall and different games that you play, things like that. But in this case, with two friends of mine, for instance, that I've just given as an instance now, who both run fairly successful businesses in Abuja, you can see the separate approach. One person is selling the pomp and the pizzazz, and the other person is being quite practical. So, which is the better of the two? Like I said, there's no real answer. You just have to consider some of these larger issues like brand positioning and value prop. So how do you want people to see you? What is it that you're selling? The good news is, whatever aisle you fall on, to the left or to the right, when it comes to these sorts of things, the things that we discuss here in personal selling are going to come in handy. So so that's it basically. Transparency Economy. It's a sales culture podcast hosted by John Lemon. Follow the guy, listen to him. He has some interesting stuff to say. He's usually talking about a business to business background, but there are a lot of ideas that are expressed on his podcast that will apply to those of us who are in the wedding industry as well. So thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you guys on the next episode. For those of you who have any questions or complaints or comments, email me ayede.taver@gmail.com. That's Alpha Yankee Echo Delta Echo .Tango Alpha Victor Echo Romeo @gmail.com. So thank you very much, guys, for listening. I'll catch you on the next episode.